from the health and visit department for a nurse to come up to the field. And so again, this would be another safety avenue to go, where our students would be on a carpet, if you will. One thing that David really didn't talk about, that it will be another area for rental. So revenue coming in, I'm not exactly sure 100% what we make as a revenue coming into Helman Field, but if we're having a smaller event and going to a second field and then having to clean up the stadium, things like that, I think we might be better off with some additional revenue. Okay? Any questions?
I have a question. Actually, it's probably more for Mr. Loeffler or for Mike. The $2.5 million. Can you break that down for board members and for the public? What this entails? I mean, it says practice turf field. We're not just talking a field.
No, what we would do what we did for Helman with the list of alternates for upgrades, like the scoreboard or additional bleachers or that kind of thing. The turf field that we built at Freedom this past summer was the construction of the field, and it was carpet only. There was not a track, so it had an edge to it. Fence to surround it. Bleachers for, I think, 500 people, I believe it was. There was a scoreboard. Lights are questionable. We really went through some gymnastics to get the lights at this field. So the good news is when we went to the board meeting, the person who complained about the lights going up in the first place didn't know that the lights were installed. So if we could pull that off, the lights could go as well. The location that we had talked about was the back side of the press box. So it's up a level. At that point, it would be nice to try and utilize a lot of the things that we already have installed. We could add on to some of the walk paths. We could add on to the fence and make 3 sides of that upper level and maybe share the back side. So, but it would be a full-fledged field minus the substantial bleachers and the track. So everything else would be different.
We would have to combine the bathrooms with that too, by just taking a walkway up to that field.
Obviously, you'd also have to put some sort of driveway up there for ambulance, for emergency access as well.
We do have that. We have that small access drive that goes around the tennis courts.
Mm-hmm.
We thought maybe shifting that, instead of having that S corner, we could move it down a couple parking spaces and do a straight line with this very small parking up top for a couple handicap spaces and an emergency vehicle if that's what was needed.
So since, the lights, I think we all are aware, were the biggest hurdle at Helman at one time. You're saying lights here, so that was to do with not only the neighbors but the township. So, what you had said, we should have started this yesterday. So that being said, in regard to, us finding this out now, the public finding this out, this just being brought to us, the township, the lighting issue, all of that, are we going down that road again, and how's that going to be handled? And what's the township take on this right now? Putting in another field and putting in more lights. It was not an easy task before.
Do we need more bathrooms?
Well, we haven't talked to the township yet. We need to get the go-ahead.
I think what you need to do is keep it in perspective. We're talking about a competition size practice field. We're not asking to build an additional stadium. So the requirements for that will be far less. But of course, they will have a list of things that they want done their way to make that work. And so that's not a surprise.
Right. But you're also adding some seating, I think 500 seats. And I'm concerned that East Rock is going to demand additional parking. Now, parking here do you foresee any point where both would be in use at the same time? Where Helman Field would be in use and the practice field would also be in use?
Sure.
I mean, I've been up there on football game nights, and the parking is disastrous at best.
Well, I don't think you'd ever have a varsity football game
Yeah.
and a practice, but
Right, we,
other than that.
after school, like a varsity on one field and JV on the other, or a varsity game and practice going on the other. Not necessarily two varsity events, it would be smaller scale.
I understand that.
Yeah.
But if you run a varsity event at Helman, football especially, you've got a parking disaster out here now, and then add a practice event on the backfield, and maybe you have 100 people out there, upwards of another 50 to 100 cars with nowhere to go. I'm concerned that East Rock is going to recognize this because they're hearing it from the residents now.
Well, I think Jeff's point and Mike's point, I understand your point. You haven't gone to East Rockville because it had to come to us first to even be a discussion here, whether we want to say, yes, continue to consider doing this, or no, we're just not going to, before even attempting to go to the township. I get what you're saying, because that's my concern too, because of knowing what we went through previously. So I guess it's, the real question is, are we supporting this piece of
I would be in
this
favor.
plan?
I would be in favor of additional fact-finding, talk to the township. I can't commit to this, obviously, but I would be in favor of additional fact-finding to see what type of restrictions, is it even feasible? Are they even willing to talk about it?
Well, and I think one of the questions too is, it's on here for 2018, is it feasible for 2018? I mean,
So
Yeah,
Mike's
as Mike said earlier, the only way 2018 is going to come into play is if you say yes tonight.
Yeah.
Which we didn't expect. It's just here for discussion.
thank you.
I mean, maybe next month you tell us to move ahead, but, so if you want, Mike and I can move ahead, we can start procedures with the township, and we can start looking into it, come back with a better estimate of what will be needed, and will there be parking, will there be pathways, will there be...
I think it's definitely something that there's a lot more questions to be answered before, really a solid decision can be made.
Can I just, what kind of, with a quote in here, what kind of fill are you talking about when you're quoting this turf field? I'm assuming it's not.
The rubber fillets and normal.
Okay.
The same as the field turf.
I mean, first of all, when you say that this is so much safer, okay, when it's 90 degrees outside, the turf can get to 200 degrees and you can get turf burns. A lot more kids are injured sliding around on turf than they are in grass. I don't know if you saw if you ask the Olympic soccer players, they'll tell you that playing on a turf field is like playing on concrete. They'd rather play on grass. In fact, one of them actually took a picture of her legs, and it went viral because her legs were so burnt up from sliding around on a turf field playing soccer, because that's what happens. 2 years ago, my daughter had a soccer tournament back here, and they ended up using the turf field as well. And the one team in the tournament refused to play on the turf field. They said they would only play games on the grass, and they said that because there were a lot of goalkeepers. There were a lot of young kid goalkeepers who ended up with cancer, and there was a higher incidence, so they were looking into why all of these keepers at such a young age, it just seemed to be strange that there were that many more kids that were goalkeepers, because they're diving, especially in practice, more so than the game. They're diving to get the ball, and so for a practice field, it seems to me that it would make more sense for you to be practicing in the grass than practicing on a turf field. And I also can't justify the cost. I actually don't have any interest in fact-finding as far as whether or not East Rockville Township would do it, because I'm not in favor of doing it. I don't think, the chemicals that are in there, I don't think it's good for the kids to always be on the turf.
Anybody else have comments, questions on the way it's worked? Okay, I'm sorry.
Just another twist on it that I want to add. I was thinking about this. I actually think it's a good problem to have, whether we go with the grass field, a turf field, whatever. What this is all saying is we have so many students who are playing sports. And all the research shows that many times it's those students that wind up staying in school. Because for some of them, that's why they come to school. They love their sport. And as a result, they're held to higher standards with academics. So I would just like you to think of it from that perspective, that I think it's a good problem to have. I know it's costly, and again, whether you go grass, whether you go turf, I know, and having talked with the high school staff, this is a problem. I look out my window, I see constant teams coming and going. So, what they're saying is true. It's used all the time. So I'd like to be able to help our students, and as many students as we can, to reach their goals and have fun here at Pennridge.
I also just wanted to add that, and I couldn't find the old numbers that we were given, and I think Mr. Dahlbert's trying to find that, but if I remember correctly, this is about 50% of what it would cost to air condition 6 elementary schools. And so if we're going to be spending $3 million, I would be putting it in that direction first.
Anybody, Steve, go ahead.
You had mentioned regarding having to flip things around for different teams and things like that. Remind me, how many teams went through conference last year? I think the girls soccer, I watched quite an exciting game and they placed. The boys soccer, they competed quite well. I think our field hockey team has competed pretty well over the last few years. I don't see a detriment there to our teams in terms of competition because they have to play on different fields. I can't see building another turf field. I can't see it, I can't justify it. I would say, why wouldn't you look into maybe leveling the other fields and trying to expand those first and see if there's a cost difference there? Then you're going to now build another field. No, I can't support that.
I agree with Steve. Thank you. That was eloquently put. Thank you.
I think unfortunately this project falls into the category that the board always complains about, capital projects that come to it at the last minute. Unless I missed something, this is the first night we've talked about this, right? And yet you're looking for approval tonight. At least that's what it seems to be. And I don't think that's going to happen. I just don't think board members feel, even the ones who might be willing to push forward with this, feel comfortable enough to do that. And if we don't do that, then we're in a hole for the 2018. So I would support Mr. Krause's proposal of looking further into this, but not committing to it for the 2018 year. I'd rather do some of these other projects that seem reasonably important and not push this to $5,300,000 this year. I don't think that, that is out of whack relative to what we've been spending recently, at least in terms of doing things other than actual full renovations of schools, which we did spend $5, and I believe in some years even more than that, over a decade of trying to upgrade all of our elementary schools. So that's where I would stand on this.
Thank you. Anybody else? Ada?
No, I agree. I mean, I understand wanting more information. I'm not opposed to getting more information, but I feel Steve just stated that very eloquently, that the teams did well. And parents would know how the teams did. Said, Steve, right, the competition was.
Well, I didn't even have a soccer player, but I know our girls' soccer team was,
They performed.
They performed, yes,
Oh.
quite well, absolutely.
And I agree with you. I was thinking the same thing when you were speaking about why don't we just level the field? And that to me would make more sense than building a whole turf field. So, thank you.
So do we want Mr. Loeffler to look into this any further, is the question. I mean, I agree with, I understand what Peter's saying, and this is the first that we're talking about it, but we're here tonight in regard to all of these projects. The discussion is to send them to approve to go forward for 2018. And here we are with, an enormous piece of this, $2.5 million. The first time we're looking at it and asked to consider this. So, yes, like you said, it's late coming to us, if it was even going to be a consideration. But hearing the varied opinions here, do we want to?
I object, this needs to go to the board meeting for a vote. No vote here. This is committee.
There'll be comment at the end of the meeting there'll be time for public comment. You can give your public comment then, Mrs. Furlong.
I like the
So in
process to
regard
be
to the
followed.
board members, addressing the board members, do we want to further discuss this right now? Or as Dr. Yarnell and we had stated earlier, if that piece comes out, then it changes this plan for 2018. We look at, the following years, 2019, 2020, possibly some of those things move up the priority ladder here and move forward.
So, like I said, so the 3-year plan was developed as it is, minus the competition field. We just threw that in there for discussion. We were told to bring that to discussion.
Okay.
Maybe we should have brought it a different way as a separate, item discussed. We knew it was not going to be, approved tonight or even next
Exactly.
month and be done by next summer.
Yeah,
So even if we take that out, we could look at it and maybe bring some items up, but that was our original 3-year plan without the state aid.
and I mean, from, Mr. Hagan and Mr. Babb's side of it, I understand completely, and like Dr. Radigan made the point that it's, I guess you can look at it in some ways, it's a good problem to have because it shows that your students are very involved in these ways. What you said, Mr. Loeffler, it was a shot in the dark to bring this here tonight and expect it to just go through just like that. Is it something that we talk about further down the road? Possibly.
Down the road.
Yes, much further down the road. There are other things here, I think, that we need to address before this. It's, I guess you could say, a wish list item, in my opinion, that, it's not the priority. So that being said, the other items on this list for 2018, do we want to move forward with those capital project items? Is the rest of the board fine with that? Okay.
Minus those 2 items related to the.
Minus the competition practice turf field.
And the
And the
500,000.
500,000.
500,000 is the replacement
Ah.
of the carpet on
Okay.
Helman, which is at its 10-year,
Okay.
it's out of warranty too, is it not?
Yeah, I think it's a 10.
Yes.
No, it wasn't 8, you were correct. So it's an 8-year warranty, so we're out 10 years.
We're out, so,
All right,
yeah,
you're
so
right, I'm
those were,
sorry.
yeah, no,
Yeah,
those were
I'm
two
fine.
separate, although they.
Originally, they told us 8 to 12 years. 8 was what they warranted for, and by the time we get to next fall, we would be at the 11th year.
So the one item removes $2.5 million out of that number.
I just have a question then
Actually,
about,
$3 million, correct. Sorry.
Because
Because you're talking
yeah,
about
because
the
you have,
5% and the 15%
600
on top of
and
that, so
some,
you're really removing $3
over
million.
600,000 in your permits and that, which maybe is most of that related to that, I would assume.
many states are looking at using turf that doesn't have that material. I'm wondering if we're looking at any of that before we just go out and get the same one for is that affected when you replace the carpet or no? Isn't that what you're talking about? For replacing the carpet for the current turf field?
That's what we're talking about, I guess. We're probably going to go look at a few different brands and talk to Dave with what's going on out there, but Field Turf is the product we've used, and probably the #1 product still out there is Field Turf.
I think your question is about the crumb rubber.
Yes.
They're
The mix.
They have different blends available now, and we are going to look at what is going to give us the best bang for our buck. And take into account the issues that you brought up. I don't know that you ever get fully away from that with a product like that, but there are lower content that we can certainly look into as an alternate to the crumb rubber. The crumb rubber was first and foremost an issue with collision because it works its way through the fabric, and when you run or you hit or it becomes airborne. That was a bigger concern than I'm not going to get into a discussion about carcinogenic content in rubber. I'm not a scientist, but yes, there have been conversations of, there are alternates to front rubber, and we're going to take a look at that as we look at different manufacturers of the carpets and what they provide.
Thanks for bringing the presentation, Mr. Bev, Mr. Hagan. I know you're advocates for the kids, the student athletes. I know you're disappointed. I get it. There's a lot of activity going on up there and a lot of juggling going on. Your timing's probably not good tonight, this particular time. Dr. Aronell touched on that already. So I still want to thank you for advocating for the student athletes. I think you do a heck of a good job putting it all together up there. I don't have a horse in the race on any field. I hope and I think this will come up again at a different time. And I wish you luck the next time you bring it up. But I want to thank both you guys for trying to get it done.
So Jeff, the items that are on there, the other items you will move forward with?
Yes.
Okay, so we'll be moving that to the October board meeting to vote on that. Thank you. And thank you, Mr. Hagan and Mr. Bell. The third item on the 4-year capital improvement plan, capital projects account funding levels.
Yes, so I just wanted to give you a summary where the capital projects funding is. The audited cash and investments as of June 30th, 17, $13.3 million in the fund. Actually, the transfer that we talked about earlier tonight from the general fund, 4.9 million provides about 18.2 million in the fund. We have the summer 2017 projects that we are finishing up now and paying for. Total cost there is about 2.9 million. And then I had the summer of 2018 estimate based on the plan that was put before you tonight at 5.3 million, which would give us a balance at the end of 17-18 before any transfers from the general fund of about $10 million. Removing the new field would take that $10 million and increase it by better than $2.5 million. So we would be about $12.5 million at the end of 2018. So,
Thank you.
and then we show the estimates from the 3-year plan for the 19 and 20 years. Yep. So it's all there on one page.
Okay, thank you. That's the last item on our agenda. Public comment at this point?
Sue Furlong, West Rock Hill Township. With the turf field, I think that maybe you should do what you said you were going to do for this first field here. Why don't you privately raise the funds? Take the $2 million that you promised to raise and pay for the second field, and don't build it until you've finished your fundraising. I think that's fair, because you said you were going to do it. It hasn't been done. I know you had donors when you ran for office the first time. Now you're running again. And these donors were from out of state. They donated several $1,000s. And they are involved in the construction industry. I hope that is not what is driving the constant building of football fields. I hope it is more than that, but I wonder. So I hope our donors this election are local and care about local needs. Don't act like you don't know what I'm talking about.
Go ahead, finish your comments.
As for the items with the school buildings, it's interesting that you had the study done, And now you're folding your hands and saying, well, we'll do another one in 3 years, we won't, make any long-term planning. But yet you have these people doing a 3-year plan for facilities and facility repair and that kind of thing, and you're not addressing the student population need planning. So to me, these people are, I think it's wise to do a 3-year planning. I'm not criticizing that. What I'm saying is it needs to go hand in glove with what planning might come along with the declining student population, because that should help seriously drive your priorities as to what these gentlemen prioritize. So to sit here and say, we're not going to do this for 3 years, we'll get another study, and then Pennridge is going to get caught behind the 8 ball again because you're going to wait for 3 years. Now, in terms of full-day kindergarten, that is not mandated by the state, and the taxpayers should not pay for that when it is not something that we are mandated to pay. We pay a lot of mandated things, but that's not one of them. So if this school district wants to pay for parents' children, first of all, full day, a 5-year-old cannot cope with a full day and get anything out of the second half of the day. So then you're just having the taxpayer pay babysitting for these parents. They should pay tuition just like we ask parents to pay tuition for summer school, because it is not mandated by the state. Taxpayers don't need to pay for that. Thank you.